So thank you so much for being here today. I want to welcome our panelists for our third Spark series of 2025. And today we're talking about startups, how they launch, when they should make good decisions about launching. And so we're just going to let our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll run into some questions. We're going to have kind of a couch type talk today. I am Diane Bevan with the Idaho Technology Council. I'm the president and CEO, and so excited to bring this new event back to the platform. So with that, I will turn it over to you first, Bethany. And if you just wanted to introduce yourself and give a little bit of your background, I think sometimes that adds to the quality of questions from our attendees when they know a little bit about your history. And then we'll do the same thing with you, Mason, and hopefully we'll get to see our third panelist.
Thank you, Diane. It's an honor to be here. I'm really excited to be a part of all of the tech growth happening here in Idaho. So a little bit about my background. I'm originally from Orange County, California refugee, like everybody around here these days, but love it here. I've been here since 2020. And so my background actually was in film. And, first job out of college was animation. I worked in Hollywood and just kind of, wasn't really into the studio system and just, knew that I didn't want to spend my youth slaving away in the studio system as I watched a lot of my classmates do so. So I actually pivoted into marketing. I got into like personal development. And if you ask Shelly G, if anybody knows her here, which I think most people do, did a Gallup strengths thing recently, and top 2 strengths is futurist and strategist. And it like fits perfectly with, my entire, seems like professional career. So I saw the potential for info marketing back in like 2009. Gary Vee and ClickFunnels, which is based here also in Idaho, and super fun. And I realized, what's the point of making films or making content if people don't know it exists? And that's where marketing is so important. So even in high school, I'd done a lot of graphic design, which merged perfectly into getting into the marketing profession. And so fast forward, got into AI like everyone did when ChatGPT dropped back in 2023. And I found myself in all these Discord groups with these, 16, 19-year-old kids doing crazy AI stuff. And it's just been a wild ride and super fun to see how much AI has evolved. And so over a year ago, or about a year ago now, in June or July, I met my one of my business partners. And we met at a crypto meetup, and I showed him voice AI, and it was, a new emerging technology that a lot of people hadn't heard of. And it's, I think, now starting to become more known. And, he saw the vision as well. And so we decided to partner up along with a few other partners who also saw the vision, and started working on building this new startup called Quantum Connect AI. And what we found was that, there's obviously a lot of missed calls that can happen. 90% of a lot of deals are lost. And a couple of my partners work in the automotive industry, and that's a huge pain point, right? Like if you have your sales agents out on the lot, they can't get back to their leads that call in and want to do test drives. And so when you lose them, they're going to just move on to the next dealership. And so that was a really good sort of case study in how we could implement voice AI along with AI automations. And that's just kind of our business model has evolved. And so we're still in the bootstrapping stage. And what's funny is what's come out of that too is, getting connected with Diane at the ITC and getting to know a lot of the folks in the last few months, 3 to 6 months that I've been kind of getting more plugged into the community. And my background is also, I helped put on events for Wonder Women Tech. So it's a women in STEM, organization, one of the oldest in the nation. And we helped really pioneer the women in STEM sort of space. And so I've taken that experience and, wanted to put on a tech event for Quantum and to really get into plugging into the AI and all the emerging technologies that are coming. And it's snowballed into this really exciting new event that we're having in September called Basecamp Tech Fest. And tech is really sort of the underlying thread of all of it, but it's really like a mini South by Southwest. We're going to have, our tech camp, our business camp, as well as our wellness. We're going to talk about biohacking. We've got guys from like the UFC coming to talk about, men's health. We've got, we're officially partnered now with OpenAI, which is exciting. So I haven't really publicly announced that just yet, but announcing it here. And we're going to be working with a lot of other government agencies. We're working with the Idaho Council for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And so I'm a child of deaf adults. And so I'm very passionate about accessibility and technology. So we're going to be working with integrating ASL into it. It's just going to be a really cool, fun, kind of event. We've got a creative camp, and so we're going to have, some local major performance art centers that you guys all know of, hopefully be part of it, as well as, AI art battles and that sort of thing. And so I have a few partners here as well, other women that we're all putting on this Basecamp Tech Fest event. And so that's my big spiel. But hopefully that gives you context of the nature of how AI has evolved and technology, and how if you just get yourself, you jump both feet in, you can find intersecting passions in whatever background you have and create something really neat and meet amazing people along the way. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mason.
Thanks, Bethany. My name is Mason. I am a principal at Capital 11. Capital 11 is a Meridian-based alternative asset investment firm. We are active across a couple different asset classes, but all of my time is spent finding, researching, and then supporting early stage technology companies. Half of the deals that we do are local to Idaho. The other half are all across the country. We enter anywhere pre-seed through A with a $250 to $1 million first check, and then like to follow on and be supportive after that. I joined. Hey, Mike, if you could mute yourself, that'd be great. Thank you. I joined the firm as an intern, actually, during undergrad. At the time, was providing data-driven insights to operating and portfolio companies. The partners continued to be more active in early stage. It made sense to bring someone on full-time to support that. They offered me the role. That was 3 years ago now. So this is the extent of what I've done professionally, but I'm very fortunate. Love what I do every day. Excited to be chatting with you all.
Thank you, Mason. You and I have spent some time together, and one of the things that I noted when we first met is how much you enjoy mentoring entrepreneurs. And even if they're not at the right moment to necessarily be an investment for Capital 11, you have always made time for entrepreneurs when they just want to have that first conversation as a mentor. And so I thank you for that. I think that that's one of the things. You have such a generous heart in that way. And obviously for our attendees today, you can really see that we have a lot of experience in Mason and Bethany. And I'm sure, Mason, as Bethany was talking, you were probably thinking that you have had lots of these conversations with entrepreneurs. They have so many ideas, and one idea leads to the next idea. And I think that from Bethany's story, it sounds to me like she's had that entrepreneurial spirit for a long time, and it's kind of slowly morphed into now some of the things that she's creating. So Mason, I'm going to go to you with a question first, and then we'll have Bethany chime in. But as you have friends that know that you work with startups, and of course, everyone's looking for capital, what is the right time for an entrepreneur to say, okay, I've had this idea, I've been sitting on it for a while. What are some of those first steps that you feel that an entrepreneur should take? I know that when I was business coaching, we would talk a lot about market research, find a few people that believe in your idea, would they be willing to pay for it? But certainly from your lens and experience, maybe talk a little bit about when is the right time, and what are some of the things that an entrepreneur should do in that startup space?
Yeah, great question. And frankly, I think you're spot on. The most important thing throughout an entire company's journey is market validation, and you have to do that from day one. So going out to your ideal customer and saying, you have a problem, if I build you a solution, will you pay for it? If they say yes, that's a great signal. Then ask them if they'll put it in writing and sign a letter of intent, and really you add some teeth behind what you're trying to do, and then go out and start building. I think the biggest mistake that people get into is they start building too early, and you are spending time, money, resources without knowing, if there's going to be market appetite on the back end of all that hard work. So as much as you can front load that market validation before you get started is super critical.
So Bethany, talk a little bit about that and how do you, like, you've built a lot of different concepts, it sounds like, in your career. And, for those that may be at the very beginning stages, maybe talk a little bit about the importance of knowing who that avatar is.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, it's really just the market validation, I think, is obviously finding and making sure that you have the right customer fit and that you've actually gotten, feedback on that. And I think the way to validate that is to, create prototypes, talk to potential customers, create landing pages, surveys, that sort of thing. And for us, like I said, a couple of my partners are in the automotive industry and in the dealership industry, and they know the pain points of missing 90% of the calls that are missed, go to other dealerships if they miss it. And there's such a massive opportunity there because, these dealerships are losing potentially 500 to like 500,000 to $1 million a year just in lost calls because, you've got hot leads that are calling in to do test drives or to get qualified. And so that already right there was like, and we, with their relationships with other dealerships, we were able to get feedback and get, a waiting list of users who are wanting to test out our software. And so that in itself was also, if you can get a reaction from people that are like, yes, that is exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for. Obviously, that you're onto something, and you can't do that, siloed. You have to do that out in the community or out, in online forums if needed, and talking to your avatar. So I think it's just a lot of common sense. I think oftentimes, as I'm coming into this world of learning about accelerators and incubators and talking to investors, and there's a lot of jargon. It's a whole new language, and it can feel very intimidating. But I think when you get through all the word salad, it just comes down to: do you have a product that people want? Do you have the competency to pull it off? And in what I've found is someone that can be oftentimes has been like sort of a lone wolf. Finding the value of having the right relationships and partnerships with people who have the same vision. And then these obviously different competencies that complement, your own strengths. I think that's important. So I think the concept of community and networking can be overlooked in something as sexy and exciting as like the AI tech world. But at the end of the day, tech is only as good as people can make it, because it's dependent on human knowledge and skill. So I think for me, that's a long answer to a short question, but I think, yeah, market validation coming down to just community conversations, testing, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy, surveys. But like I said, the reaction we got just from like 20 different, car sales guys, and some people we've talked to on LinkedIn told me, that we obviously have something ready to go if we have a waiting list. And so I think if you can look for things that are also in your life that you can see as a problem that you've struggled with, you obviously have to find things that, resonate with you too, because otherwise it just becomes like an expensive hobby or maybe an expensive learning lesson, So that's what comes to mind. So hopefully that answers the question.
No, that was great. And I love that you brought up surveys. Like we have for some of our Idaho Tech Council members, we've run some beta tests for them where we've helped them create, a questionnaire that was very anonymous that said, we have a member, they're looking to test on X, is this something that you're interested? Because they were looking for a very specific avatar, small business person to test their software service. That was quite a few months ago. So I do know the value in having that. So Mason, as we are seeing so many tech startups right now, there's never been a better time to jump into entrepreneurship. However, there is a big risk involved as well. And what we have found, at least with a lot of our recent new companies that have engaged with the Idaho Tech Council, in a lot of cases, they've come out of corporate world. So they've been potentially an engineer for 10, 20 years within HP or Micron or, Cradlepoint, and they have an idea and now they're launching into a business. And so, but they haven't been an entrepreneur before, because there's two types of of entrepreneurs, right? There's the one that's been just a serial entrepreneur. They go from business idea to business idea. Maybe they have a couple of exits and they start another one. And then there's those that take their expertise, knowledge of what they've learned in corporate and turn that into a business. Do a little comparison of the two and maybe some advice that person that's never been an entrepreneur, like what are some of the first things that they really need to pause and take a moment to learn from potentially a business coach or a mentor?
That is a good question. Um, I think a lot of it comes down to why are you doing what you're doing, and then what is the next milestone that you're trying to accomplish, and then running as hard as you can at that specific milestone. um, I think where first time founders often struggle, and especially those who come from corporate backgrounds, as a founder you have no one telling you what to do. You have all of the time, you have all of the autonomy, you have control of all the resources you have, access to. And oftentimes, for no reason other than inexperience, people get motion confused for progress. And so I, to any founder, experienced or unexperienced, it's really understanding where am I going, what are the most important things that are going to get me there, and then just going heads down and executing against those. I don't necessarily think you need a business coach to get there. It can be helpful. It can be helpful to have someone to kind of give candid feedback to, but mentors or other people can also fill that role incredibly well.
That's really good advice. I think for each new entrepreneur, really identifying what they don't know that they don't know yet. I have seen very successful, what I thought in my mind a successful product or service, but a business fail because they didn't really have that support system around them to kind of speak into them when they need to make some pivots. And so let's talk about the money aspect a lot. That's your expertise at Capital 11. I'm sure, I don't know what the percentage is of the number of businesses that come to you looking for funding versus those that are fundable, and kind of like if there's something that you're seeing that you're like, wow, if I could let every entrepreneur know that this is probably where they need to be before they're looking for funding. We get calls a lot at the Idaho Tech Council. In fact, I have several that have come in just in the last week of software companies in Idaho that are they're at that point now where they need funding, but they're not sure if they are a fundable business for, say, an investor like yourself.
Yeah, good question. And unfortunately, the answer is not very satisfying because there's just an absurd amount of nuance to early stage investing. Um, if you feel like that is the right path for you and your company to go down, I would say there's a couple things that you can, um, you know, gut check against before even trying to reach out to venture capitalists specifically. There's other types of capital providers that might be a better fit. So I'll speak briefly to the kind of venture capital piece. First is we're looking for really, really big outcomes. Um, Within Capital 11, if I can't see a very, very clear path to a $500 million enterprise value exit in 7 to 10 years without having majority market share, I can't even really start engaging with the business. The outcome just won't be big enough to have a material impact on my fund. So that's the first thing is what kind of company and what kind of outcome are you as a founder hoping to facilitate? And if it's not, a really, really big company, not a really, really big outcome, venture capital is not the right capital partner for you. Now, that's not to say you can't build incredible technology businesses that are smaller than that and make everyone involved a lot of money. It's just the way, fund dynamics work. You have to be taking really big swings in order to generate good returns for our investors. So that's the first kind of gut check thing. The next gut check thing is how far along is the company? And we talk about risk internally in three major buckets. You have product risk, market risk, and execution risk. There's obviously subcategories and lots of other types, but high level, you can kind of summarize those three buckets. Different investors and different stages are willing to take different types of risk. So you need to understand really where is my business today, what risks will any reasonable person say, like, yes, these risks exist, and then are you raising or are you reaching out to investors who are comfortable with that type of risk. So for example, while Capital 11 is early, we 95% of the time are not looking to take product risk. So we want the product to be functioning and in market and with paying customers before we can really dive in. Now, sometimes there are exceptions to that, but they're, again, really unique and nuanced. So those are the buckets that I would think about. Is one, what kind of outcome am I hoping for? And then where is my business today? And what type of funds are comfortable with the current status?
That's really good advice. And I think there's a lot of products for the very early stage that are definitely would qualify before a level of venture capital firms, right? So there's, SBA has some products. Maybe it's just a line of credit from your bank. There's family and friends. I know that when I was a business coach for the Women's Business Center, we would talk, we would work with an entrepreneur and say, what do they currently have in cash flow? And would that better serve them to use that as the collateral towards, an SBA 7A loan versus just they get to the point where they're down to $0 and now they're stuck. They've invested everything that they have and they struggle to get to that next stage of funding that they need to get to the finish line. And so I do think that, with today's theme, being the startup launch pad, as you look at launching a business or in those early stages, to just really map out, like, what does success look like and how much money is it going to take you to get in the first 6 months, first year to that first paying customer. And I think that that's really, really important. So Bethany, let's go back to you for a little bit. And as you were listening to Mason discuss kind of the different things that an entrepreneur really needs to think about when they're looking at how they're going to fund their business, I know that you've had a lot of different experiences, and then we're going to wrap up capital and we're going to switch over to a little bit about AI and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, like, I'm on the other side of what Mason's talking about. We have actually we've gotten to know each other a little bit and have met with Capital 11. They've gave us really good feedback. So we're actually like in the pre-seed stage. So like Mason was saying, there is absolutely like a monster opportunity for our automotive software that we're currently bootstrapping. And that does take, it takes friends and family kind of capital. And so we've been bootstrapping in the last like 6 months or so. And we are also exploring, potential non-dilutive funding options like, government funding through some of the innovation like seed funding programs that are out there. So that's also, another way, like you were saying, to potentially bootstrap a business where it's challenging, but it also, I think, is really valuable because you do get to see and have to focus on what actually generates revenue. What are the actual features and benefits that people need by having to be, wise and being strategic about what the cost is going to be for the development. And so definitely have learned a lot, which, I've heard lots of startup stories, and it's very true. Like, there's no shortcuts. You really do. Like, there's no playbook. You can listen to all of the startup talks that you want, and, learn as much lingo as you can. At the end of the day, I think one of the biggest things that I'm learning is, working with developers, especially, is, man, you can oftentimes, there's a lot of tech issues that pop up, and, it's like, oh, it's going to take, a couple weeks to get these features built in. And, like, 9 weeks later, we're still, whatever. So you run into those kinds of things. And I think, I always heard that really, overly used phrase, like, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, but it is so true. You really can't put a timeline on this kind of stuff, because I think things work out when the time is right, and, from somebody who is new to the sort of startup world and understanding and navigating it, you're also forced to be resourceful. So, whether it's using your own savings or SBA loans, or, whatever it is, friends and family, it really, I think, solidifies, and really makes very clear, like, what you're actually capable of. And for me, for me personally, I think there's also a lot of drive in, can I fulfill my potential? And I think that, that's what's been really fun about all this is, knowing that it is possible, and hearing so many great stories. And, with Capital 11, I've heard so many wonderful things about how they've been able to, help businesses scale. And so, it's fun to see sort of the gamut that's running. And so I know for us, building those relationships are very important, because we also get to learn, along the way, and having feedback from Capital 11 was incredibly insightful. And so, we might not be exactly the place where we're in a Series A funding right now, but it has been a journey. And I would say, yeah, it's more about recognizing that it's going to be something that takes time, which is really hard to do, because I feel like we're programmed to just do stuff like instant gratification. But I think, that's what's becoming really valuable, because you also learn to discern things. And it took me a while to kind of figure out, oh, I think this person's like blowing smoke up, and, or maybe they're really hyped about this and they believe it, but at the end of the day, like, I'm not sure if they can actually do the job. And so it's learning how to, like, read people and judge if this is going to be like a good working relationship or not, or partnership. So, for me, I think it's definitely been more of a, how creative can we get with the funding, and focus on really getting the reaction that I think that we get, for, the automotive stuff. And then on the other side, we do have clients for our general voice AI and automations for smaller businesses. But, like, the big thing is getting that automotive software built out, because I think dealerships across the nation could really benefit from it. So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, definitely being on the other side of it has been really interesting, and it's fun to hear.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, you actually answered a lot of my questions. So you mentioned in your answer talking about relationships, and I know that Mason, you can probably weigh in on this too, but one of the most important things in business is relationships. And, I know that, like, if an entrepreneur is, whether they're in front of a VC, or whether they're in front of their banker, whether they're in front of a family member that's funding their business, that ability to speak on, here's what I want to do, here's the client that I want to serve, and those KPIs, right? What can you measure? So as you think and you want to have, I think sometimes entrepreneurs may struggle a little bit with confidence as well, because it is a journey. And I know that there seems to feel like that when we talk about AI, it seems like there's this urgency to be the first, to run really fast and create these AI automated software systems, but you really need to also do your due diligence and your testing and make sure that you know what you're measuring. So as someone who's building an AI company currently right now, Bethany, what were some of the steps that you first took to kind of build that community, and also identify your KPIs? Because in your first 6 months, your KPI may not be a sale, but it could be other things that you can measure, because as you start measuring things, then that does give you a story to tell a potential funder. And I'd love to hear also Mason's thought on that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if I was muted. Yes, KPIs for sure. I think that's number one. Thankfully, early on, a couple of the senior partners that we have that are sort of in an advisory role, very much have a lot of executive senior experience doing negotiations, mergers and acquisitions and that sort of thing. And so they've been able to help sort of guide us along the way too. Because, you know, I come from the marketing and film and entertainment world. And so the idea of and I'm a creative at heart, right? So the numbers thing, the sales, the negotiations, the KPIs, all that stuff is very new. However, obviously it is extremely important because at the end of the day, investors just want to see numbers and justification, right? And so we can talk in all the marketing lingo we want, but at the end of the day, black and white on paper, do the numbers make sense? And for us, it has. And you were saying like with the, you know, this race of AI, what I'm finding is since I've been, you know, into the AI world since 2023, at the end of the day, it's like every other technology that just has a lot of hype. Like look at, you know, crypto. It's taken, I don't know, 15, 20 years to start really maturing to where people, they're just starting to get it and like, and, you know, buy crypto. And so those early adopters, as much as it can gain you a lot of market share in the beginning, man, like I said, technology is dependent on human, you know, skills, really, like about from the hardware and the software, the updates and the infrastructure. And I have watched dozens of AI companies flop because of the hype. And so there's this constant like fear mongering of like, we got to get, you know, as fast to it. And what we're finding is like at the end of the day, like strategic partnerships are everything. So we don't necessarily, as we're bootstrapping our AI software, you know, we've partnered with a couple other firms that have gotten invaluable input from us and making, you know, some of their offerings better. And we have these, you know, sort of like exclusive, you know, agreement deals, because we also get to bring like real life experience. Your developers can come up with all these ideas, but at the end of the day, like they don't have boots on the ground experience. And they're developers, right? So it's going to be different than what a dealership is, their pain points are going to be, and really being able to dial in that software that actually gets like, you know, really shows real benefit and real actual, you know, real conversions. And so that's something that has been interesting is I'm finding myself slowing down and being like, you know what, at the end of the day, like there's so much hype, nothing beats experience and time and strategic relationships, like you were saying. Because, you know, again, I've watched a lot of these guys blow up. You know, you'll see stuff on YouTube of like build your AI company, da da da, these like 19-year-old kids. But the thing is, like, they don't have life experience. They may be smart and might be really good at hyping, but at the end of the day, nothing replaces experience, nothing replaces professionalism. And if you're a 19-year-old kid in college, as mature as you may be and as smart as you may be, there are a lot of nuances to your corporate, you know, strategic relationships with other professionals. So there's an interesting contrast, right? Like the trade-off of youth and excitement to create quick things very quickly and iteratively. But the trade-off is they also lose a lot of interest, you know, and they get bored quickly. And then they're just like, you know, there's so many other shiny object syndrome, you know, things that are out there. And so I think, yeah, that's what's been interesting to see, this evolution. And I'm coming from a marketing and film world, you know, like you can really see the programming right around, everything's around marketing. But again, at the end of the day, hype aside, does your product actually deliver results? And you can only know that based on, are you getting conversions? Are you able to get the feedback from your user base, from, you know, your beta users that are willing to let you test things and believe in the vision? And that requires community, that requires getting out and meeting people. And to answer your question too, like I've just now started getting, you know, sort of involved in the community and showing up to events and realizing like, oh my gosh, on Instagram, there's tons of Boise pages. Like, how did I not know this? And I'm seeing stuff pop up. I'm going to go, you know, go check it out. And along the way, I've made a lot of new friends, and in a very short amount of time. You know, Idaho's especially like in the Treasure Valley, it's a very small pool. And so there's major opportunity. I'm not sure people are aware, like Boise is the second fastest growing tech hub in the nation after Salt Lake. And so, and there also isn't enough, I think, skilled people in tech to meet the demand that's coming in. And so there's a major opportunity from that perspective to get out and meet people. And, you know, the ITC has been amazing. And Diane, you've been amazing too in getting us connected and really being able to create this, you know, this ecosystem for all of us to kind of meet and share things and all grow together ideally. So I would say, yeah, I as much of fear mongering as there is coming from the entertainment and film world and seeing how much smoke and mirrors there truly is in production, I'm realizing like it's just, yes, go as fast as you can, but also like don't be afraid that just because there's all these other, you know, potential competitors does not mean the product is good, because all of the competitive research we did, I mean, our technology was way better, and it was super interesting to even see that. Like, and oh, another thing too is customer service. We would like sign up to do these demos, and like wouldn't get responses, wouldn't get follow-ups. And so that was another telling thing is, you know, people can throw up a site anytime they want, but actually having the infrastructure in place to meet the demand and customer service and respond to people is a very different story. So that's another thing too that people don't think about in this AI tech world is customer relations is everything. And so hopefully, yeah, again, I can go on, but that's what comes to mind with your question. So
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would add is in the really early days, all one of the only resources a founder has is their network. And so how can you use your network to hit KPIs and de-risk the opportunity? Um, it's something that gets referred to a lot as founder market fit. Why is this person the right person to solve this problem? And usually it comes down to them having the right network. They can get in front of customers very easily. They can attract the right type of talent. Um, they can establish strategic partnerships with other people in the industry, and so all of those kind of go into founder market fit. Why is this the right person to be solving this problem? And then what I look for in an early founder is, how are you using that network to hit those KPIs? How have you shown market demand? How have you been able to ship product? um, and all of that in the early days comes back to the founders network, or their ability to network. And so it's maybe they didn't have it when they started, but they're 6 months in and have been able to make really strong inroads into the industry and the sector.
I love that. I've attended a lot of the founders events that you've held at Capital 11, and I think that you have done a stellar job in this valley of really engaging with every level of founders and getting them all in a room together. Because sometimes being an entrepreneur can feel really like lonely and that you're on this island by yourself. And I think the importance of building that ecosystem around you, whether it's through the Idaho Tech Council, whether it's through a local chamber of commerce or an entrepreneurs like an EO group or a networking group, but the importance of having people in your corner that you can, bounce things off of and just feel like you're supported. Because I owned a business myself for almost 10 years and in a rural area of rural Idaho. And there were a lot of days when in my mind, even though I probably have people around me, I felt so alone. And so it's a tough journey. It's definitely not for the weak. It's not an 8 to 5 job. It's a very disciplined job because if you don't have someone telling you got to clock in, you still got to get up and work your business. And so I think that there is over time, like there's certain personalities that do really, really well in entrepreneurship and some that don't. And I think that I love that you talked about the different risks involved and how to mitigate some of those risks. And so, like for some entrepreneurs, like I remember now we're seeing all this amazing success with Rachel with Bold Hue. But I remember 5 years ago when she reached out to me and said, "Hey, I got this idea." And now look at the money and the millions of dollars that she's going to be able to raise. And that company is doing extremely well in their launch, but she didn't do it overnight. It took a lot of work. And so I think all of the advice that you both have shared has been really great. So I'm thanking you for that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and thank everyone for